Commission. Welcome to everybody that's here. I'd like to start the meeting with a roll call and Pledge of Allegiance. First, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Now we'll call the roll. Kostick, I'm here. Kennedy?
Here.
Biddle?
Here.
Stanko?
Here.
Flavin?
Here.
And Lenny Pedestris, who's also on the fire department, he's at a invitation by the state fire marshal to attend a seminar in Lansing, and he's on his way back, so hopefully he'll make the meeting. So we'll hope that Lenny will be able to make the meeting. With that, we have a quorum, and we're going to have two presentations to start the meeting. We have a few people in the audience tonight. One is one of our illustrious trustees, Bill. Welcome. Glad you're here. Thank you very much for being here. Ryan, good to see you. Derek, I'm going to let you introduce our special guest, Maria Sedka from Fishbeck Engineers. So, Derek?
First things first, on the agenda, there was a mistake. This is not the sewer asset management plan presentation, but the water asset management plan presentation. So what Maria will be presenting is basically a summary of the work that they've done so far over the past, I think, year and a half regarding our water asset management plan that they've been developing along with Charles Rain's company. In addition to our water asset management plan, there's also been a reliability study that's been performed pretty much in conjunction or around the same time as the water asset management plan, and that water reliability study, portions of that get factored into the water asset management plan. So water asset management plan takes into consideration the conditions of the pipes, the criticality of the assets, the expense associated with repair, longevity, capital improvement schedules over 20 to 25 years, and then the reliability study, which reviews water pressures, flows. That is used to help build the water asset management plan. Now, the water reliability study is required to do every so often. The water asset management plan is required to do every so often, or at least update every so often. We were on the cycle to do the water reliability study, so it actually worked out well with coordinating those two together. They kind of both came in at about the same time. So the water reliability study is about complete. I think Maria had mentioned maybe another couple of weeks to finalize that, but we felt that it was to the point where enough of that information was available to be able to present to you the water asset management plan, which has had access to basically the draft of the reliability study to be able to be confident that what we're presenting to you is going to be pretty close to what the finished product is going to be. So as Bill had mentioned earlier, Maria works for Fishbeck. She's been the lead engineer from Fishbeck, working on both our water asset management plan, but also our sewer asset management plan. So she's been working with the township for quite some time, and we were very happy with the work they did with our sewer asset management plan. So when we looked to do our water asset management plan, it was a no-brainer to partner with Rains and Fishbeck to do that work. So I do want to be clear, there are going to be some significant capital improvements that this plan is going to recommend over a period of 25 years at a fairly significant cost. What we will be doing after this plan is finalized is putting together a funding strategy to address those requirements for the next 25 years. So don't let the numbers scare you. We will be having conversations about how to kind of tackle that project list, which is a 25-year project list, in the next 3 to 6 months, so that we can formulate the best way to address those priorities in the time that Fishbeck said that we should be. So with that, Maria has a presentation, and she has the floor.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. I do have handouts, so if you guys, if you don't mind. I think I made enough copies.
Thank you.
Forgive me, I was in the field all day today. I usually don't show up to meetings dressed like this, but I was in the mud. Also, I'm beginning to lose my voice, so hopefully I can get through this without losing it completely. So, again, thank you for having us here. So, Water Asset Management Plan, as Derek mentioned, this is required by Eagle to do. Back in 2017, they sort of mandated that all the communities should develop a water asset management plan. Back in 2019, I think we submitted the plan to do the plan on your behalf, sort of this is our plan to do it. We're going to take the next few years to do it. And so we're kind of finalizing it now, and you're seeing the first version of it. And then eventually we're going to submit a report to you and then to Eagle as well, because they do require it. So what's in our water asset management plan? First part is an inventory and a condition assessment. Eagle wants everybody to know what they have and what condition it's in. And you'd be surprised how many communities don't know what they have. So that's the first part. And then asset criticality, which is to rate your assets and put them in order of importance and order of needs. And then finally develop a capital improvement plan. So we're kind of going to go over all of that here today. Oh, and at any time, please, if you have questions, let me know, so we don't have to wait till the end. So asset inventory and condition assessment. Your water system is relatively easy. We've got hydrants, gate valves, and water main pipes. We don't have booster stations, we don't have storage tanks, we don't have a water treatment plant, so it's really hydrants, gate valves, and pipes. But as part of the inventory, we did develop a GIS database of your system, so we had built one for your sewer system as part of the sewer asset management plan. So when we started the water, we developed a water asset GIS database. So now you have it all in one system, your water, your sanitary, all in one. We developed a naming convention, and we're going to go through it. We brought in all the record drawings, and then we did an inventory. So that's kind of what's in this first phase. There's a sample of your GIS database. So all the water main lines are in there with the size, the condition, the age, the material is all in there. The valves, don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse if I? Okay, great. So that's a gate valve right there. And the red up here is a hydrant. So all your hydrants are now in GIS, all your gate valves. The line connectivity is all in there. And you can see here on the right, sort of if you click on a water main, the information about it comes up. Its name, the size, the installation date, the material, and then down here is the consequence of failure and probability of failure and BRE, which we'll talk about in a minute. So it's all in one place for you.
Maria, on the GIS system or the GIS map for the water system, what is the tolerance level of location on the water system that's been overlaid over the GIS?
I mean, it is inches. You know, it is now, and it's down to the inches. And it's now all where you guys, your group can pull it up, go on the field, locate it all, the gate valves, find out what it is, find out what's important about it. If you have a water main break, it's all in one place. You can figure out which gate valves to close without pulling out record drawings, to isolate a water system, to look at it. It's all in there. You can also click on a water main and pull up the record drawings of that water main now. It's all in one place. All the as-builts, that's the naming convention. So we developed a naming convention, and we divided the township into 5 sections. And every fire hydrant, every gate valve, every water main segment has a unique identifier now based on the segment it's in. So, you know, it'll take them time to get used to all this naming convention, but now everything's got a name. And also, you guys had 76 record drawings, as-builts of your water system. All of those have been scanned and linked to GIS, as we said, so you can click on a water main and those record drawings will come out. Whether you're in the office or you're on an iPad in the field, the middle of the night when they've got a water main break, they've got that, you know, the iPad, and they can look at all that information. So all that's been incorporated now as part of this study. So that's the GIS. As part of that, we ended up, you know, with a whole inventory of the system. So as of now, we have 605 gate valves in your system, 681 hydrants, and 398,000 feet of water main. So that is your water system, as you can see on that drawing.
3,398 feet of what?
398,000 feet of water main.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I said that wrong. So, as part of this, because we collected all this information, we can sort it any which way you want. So you can see that here by diameter, all your water main, both on the map and as a pie chart and on the list. The most you have is 8-inch, but you do still have a lot of 6-inch, which is the stuff in green. And then you can see the rest of the colors. You don't have much 10-inch, surprisingly, but a lot of 12-inch, a lot of 8-inch, and a lot of 6-inch that eventually we'll need to replace. Any questions so far? Okay. By material, also, we can sort it out by material now that we have all the info. You do have a lot of still cast iron pipe. That's the old pipe. Up until the 1940s, a lot of it was cast iron. Since then, we've moved on to ductile iron or plastic, which is the PVC or HDPE. You do have a small section that's PCCP, which is pre-stressed concrete pipe. You don't have a lot of it, but that's your main line coming in from the mainland that feeds the system right here. If I can see my mouse. So that's by material.
Can I ask a question, John?
Sure.
John, when you have water main breaks, what's the predominant material that's giving you problems? Is it the cast iron?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what we have the most of.
It's your green. Yeah, it's your oldest, and it's what it actually has lasted a long time. The cast iron's from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. I mean, it's done a good job. It's just it's almost 100 years old, if not more, in some cases. So, but you do have a lot of it, and if you go back, a lot of your cast iron is also your 6-inch. So it's also the too small, too old, the material. Okay. By age, you can see the red is your 1920s. I didn't put a pie chart here because it would have been too small, but then I just kind of did it by decades. So you can kind of just get a feel of the age of a lot of your water main.
That's the cast iron stuff, if I was listening.
Yep, a lot of your cast iron, as I said, cast iron 1920s to 1940s, 50s, and then they switched to ductile. So the pink, the orange, the red, all of that is your old pipe. Keep going. All right, so that's your inventory. So now your whole system is inventoried is in GIS. The second thing that EGLE requires is an asset criticality to be done. And what they ask us to do is two parameters, probability of failure and consequence of failure. The probability of failure, simply put, is how likely is this asset to fail? What's the condition of the asset? And it's a 1 through 5 rating. The consequence of failure is how important is this asset to your system? It's a 1 through 5 rating. So a good example how for consequence of failure, if you have a pump station, the pump, really important to the pump station. That should have a high consequence of failure. The air condition, not as important. Pump station will still function without the air condition, right? Maybe uncomfortable, but it's not that important to the function of that pump station. So that's how they want to rate it. So probability of failure, consequence of failure, and if you multiply them together, you get these are EGLE terms, not mine. Business risk exposure, BRE, and that's pretty much the POF times the COF. So since each one's 1 through 5, the BRE becomes 1 through 25 rating. And the way EGLE says is, anything with a 16 and higher rating, which is up here in the red, is really important to your system and in bad shape. So you got to tackle those first. The ones in green, so 1 through 4s, 1 through 5s, neither that important, but also in good shape, so you can kind of, don't worry about those. And the stuff in yellow is in the middle, 5 to 15. It's a judgment call. It's what does the community want to do. Okay? So, the probability of failure for your assets, we took 3 parameters. So, on the sewer side, the way we determine the condition of an asset is we go televise the sewer. Right? We put a camera in the sewer, camera goes through, we look at it, we rate the sewers. For the water system, there is no affordable way to physically inspect water mains. There's a way to do it, but it's ridiculously expensive, and you can't do all your pipes. So it's a purely EGLE required, it's a desktop exercise. We're just doing a desktop exercise for probability of failure. That's all we have until there's a really cheap method to inspect water main. So the 3 categories we've used for your system is remaining useful life, basically the age. How old is the sewer is one category. The C factor, that comes from the modeling we do for your system to determine how well that pipe carries water, basically. You know, how much friction, how much stuff is stuck in the pipe, and then water main breaks. If a pipe segment has history of water main breaks, that goes into the score of the probability of failure. So that's what we've done, and you can kind of see the table of how we scored things. So again, we're sticking to the red, yellow, and green. So the ones that are red have a high probability of failure. You can see which ones on the map. Yellows are the mediums, and the low priority is the green. You do have some water main segments that, based on the 3 categories, have scored high. You can see where they are. So now, consequence of failure, again, desktop exercise. The 3 categories we've used is the diameter of the water main, and the idea is the bigger the water main, the more area it serves, the more important it is to your system. The physical location, how easy it is to get to it should it break. If it's on a farmland, John and his folks can get to it pretty quick, they can fix it. But if it's under a railroad or under, you know, then it becomes, not that you have too many railroads, but you know, an example, then it becomes really difficult to, so obviously the 2 connections coming in from the mainland for you guys score really high, and consequences of those break. Ridiculously hard to get, very important because they feed the whole township, and they're very hard to get to fix. And obviously the 3rd one is customer impact. So you can see which assets in your system score high for consequence. So if you multiply them together, interestingly, you guys have no high BREs, because the ones that are really are in bad shape are the small pipes that are not that critical. So your BRE, you have no 16 through 25s in the BRE, but you know, from an EGLE perspective, you're good. But you do have some water mains that are likely to break. So even though the BRE cancels it out because they're not that big, but they are ones that, you know, we need to keep an eye on. So far, so good? All right. So what we've gone through, and this is kind of hard to read, but just gives you an example. So we've created the spreadsheet for all your water main segments, your gate valves, your hydrants, and you guys will get an Excel version of this. It just lists the water mains, the material, the size, the length, the useful life. So most ductile iron pipe has a 75-year life. Cast iron has a 75-year life. Plastic pipe tends to have 50-year life. So when they were installed, and when does that expiration date kicks in for those? So you can see you've got some with negative. Way at the bottom, if you can see some of your cast iron is way past. They're 100 years, over 100 years old. Just a rough guess at replacement cost, just so you have it. Then the probability of failure, and then the consequence of failure, and then the BRE, right? Kind of what we just talked about, but it's all in a spreadsheet. That fed the GIS. I just took a snapshot here, just so you can see some. Good?
So we'll get a list of this in the report,
Yes, you will have the whole list in the report.
all the water main.
It's like 10 pages, I think is, yeah.
And is it prioritized?
You can be, yes. I mean, so You will also have the Excel version of it that Derek will have, so you can sort it, prioritize, and John, whatever you guys want. But yes, you will have the Excel sheet as well as the
But-
PDF.
Yep, and I think we'll cover it on later slides, but, you know, this information is built into the asset management plan. So if you go back, I think, go back to one or two slides before this, one more back. So
Yes.
what more than likely you're gonna see on your asset management plan is, you know, these in red here being your first projects that we would undertake. So these would be 1 to 2 years, the next 1 to 2 years, we'd be working on these projects. And then you continue to move down that list, but they, through our asset management plan, have put that together in consulting also with us, consulting with John with the field conditions and what he knows about things, me with regards to finance and how we can design that based upon bonding and whatnot. So what bonds we have falling off and whether we do it at lump amounts or we spread it all across, you know, a period of time. So they've been involved with us in trying to put that together. So, and I think you got slides on that, don't you?
Yep.
Okay.
Before you leave that slide,
Yep.
John, you're looking at it, right? So the one I noticed, the ones on near Swan Island and whatnot are down.
They turn yellow though when you combine
Okay,
them.
but I'm looking at the one on, well, I remember we talked a couple years ago about replacing the water main on Voight.
Not on Voight, right, at Meridian at Voight. That's on there, we discussed that.
Meridian at Voight, because I see that in red, high priority is Bridge Road. Has that been an area of frequent breaks?
Hydraulic model and input from the brakes, yes.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, please. That's what this is for.
The very first one we want to do is that piece from Bridge Road to just north of Voight, to get that last little piece out of there.
On Meridian. Okay,
So my question, and I think you've already kind of answered it, this isn't just projections. This is also based on historical water main breaks that you guys have had so that you know that there's a degree of accuracy in this plan. Okay.
And also it's been flow modeled too. So like John can elaborate, but if you have an area that has all 12-inch water main, but you might have a 6-inch section that's connecting it in order to have a complete 12-inch loop all the way around, that's a high priority to have that way. So you might have a section of 6 that's been prioritized to replace to a 12 based upon flow characteristics, condition of the pipe, and criticality to, or the functionality of the asset, right?
Okay.
Yep, as a network, as a
Got
system.
moved up because
Okay.
of that.
All right. Good.
The hydraulic model said, no, do these first. You really need to get that piece, because as Bill stated, the last time we did a project, we just couldn't afford it at the time, and we put it on the shelf, so we really need to move that up high on the list.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Just curious, the pipe that we're putting in new now, is that being given a 50-year lifespan?
It depends on the material. If it's PVC, yes, it starts the clock at 50. If it's ductile iron, it's 75 years. Yep.
But a lot of those materials haven't been utilized in water systems
Right, that's
for
what I'm
50 or
wondering.
75 years. So that is the,
technology got
That is the
ahead with-
official Eagle, yes,
Okay.
yes.
but just like, you know, you have, well, other materials that maybe had a theoretical useful life of 75 years, they've lasted 100 years.
I was just
so
going to say,
Know in our lifetime what it's assigned.
Probably.
But
No.
but like you mentioned PVC, are you including it at the HDPE, which is your high density
yes.
polyethylene?
I think both
kind of a pipe?
HDPE and PVC have a life of 50 years, yes, right now.
Okay,
per
so
Eagle.
both of those have the same kind of lifespan.
Yeah, I can double check, but yeah, I think so, yeah. But as Derek, I mean, we've got ductile iron, you can see that it's 75 years, but they've been in the ground 100 years. And a lot of them work, you know?
Right.
Now, it's, sooner or later, they're all gonna,
Carry water like a 2-inch water main, but they.
yeah, yeah.
Where did those life expectancy rates come from? Was that something that your company put together, or is that
It's
industry? Is that
industry
industry
standards,
kind
yep.
of
Yep.
benchmark that they
Yep.
use?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The difference in cost, the longer life expectancy, 75
ductile iron definitely costs more.
Do you have a percentage you can share?
I can,
You don't have to, if you don't have
it depends on the size of the pipe.
Well,
Yeah.
Holding the size is equal to it.
Yeah, I think it's about 20% more, probably, for ductile iron, if not more.
But you could build the argument
Yeah.
that if you got 25 more years out of it, that 20% was a smart.
Not necessarily, and the reason being is the material type isn't necessarily the only thing to be considered with cost. It's also the installation type. So,
Is the variance in cost plastic versus ductile?
well, there's variance in methods for installation of the various pipes. Some installation, which some materials require, or applications, like if you're going under a canal or something, you know, that it requires different methods which may cost more or less.
Yeah, there's certain, if you're tunneling a water main because there's a railroad or there's a creek, you can't use ductile. You don't have a choice. You have to use HDPE pipe. Because
Flexible.
yes, and you can fuse it and just literally push the whole thing as opposed to ductile comes in pieces. So sometimes you can't use ductile and you do have to use plastic, depending on the construction method, as Derek said.
I would have thought plastic would have lasted longer than.
Ductile?
Yeah, I really would have. And I
So,
don't-
you
I
know
don't
what,
if
it very
it's-
well could at the end of the day. You know, those are standard now because as there's no plastic that's been in the ground for more than 30, 40 years.
That's where I was gonna go.
Yeah.
It's based on historical data that they don't
Yeah,
have,
exactly,
right?
yes.
Just like we don't have much, but communities have transite pipe, which has asbestos in it. So, you know, those type of pipes, you wouldn't have thought, well, I'm gonna put asbestos in a water main, you know, but it was a good idea then, but they didn't know that asbestos was something that
Yeah.
you shouldn't be using, so. The point being that technology, they really don't know that, they will eventually, but the application hasn't proven, you know, it to be longer than that, or they can't theorize that it's longer than that.
You know, look at not to go that direction, but look at the big water main break that happened in Detroit. That was a steel pipe. Nobody until that happened thought there was a problem in steel water main pipe. And now everybody's like, oh, So, you know, you never know. Sometimes it also depends on the installation, who's putting it in. You know, a crappy crew can ruin a ductile iron pipe. You know, a great crew can, you know, yeah, we all have seen, you know, crappy crews put them in. So, you know, we'll see. So that's the kind of the summary spreadsheet. So I do want to touch just real quick on the water liability study. So Derek did mention it. So we are doing, independent of the asset management, but sort of together, is the water liability study. So that is required. It's another thing that's required every 5 years to upgrade your water reliability study. And what that looks like, what that looks at is your flows and your pressures in your system. Where the asset management's purely looking at the condition, the water liability is looking at your flows. Are you able to provide adequate flows, adequate pressures all over the system today and in the future? Can you do it under average conditions, max day conditions, sort of your hottest day of the year when you're irrigating, and under fire flow demand? So if you have a fire, can you provide enough water for fire? So those are required. And I just took a snapshot of one, sort of kind of see where you have some issues with the flow. And that came with some recommendations to upsize certain pipes to improve your pressures, you improve your flows in the system. So that report is going to be coming to you guys in a few weeks. But what we did is we took their recommendations for what water mains need to be replaced, plus the ones we did from the condition assessment, plus some history to come up with your CIP list. So just note. So I've got 3 sources for your capital improvement plan. So the picture I'm showing you here is fire flow contours for under the 2028 projections. You don't have much growth, so it's really mostly just kind of age of the system. But that's what fire flow issues. And we need to get you, we like to see 2,000 gallons per minute for fire flow as much as possible. So you can see where you have some areas where we need to kind of bump up your fire flow.
We do have fresh water all around us.
True.
though.
I'm not arguing. So, just don't like them to drink it. So, all right. So this is, don't shoot the messenger for the next couple sheets. All right. So based on, as we said, the water liability study, the condition assessment, and discussion with John and Derek, this is the minimum we recommend replacing in your system. As you can see, most of it is cast iron, pretty much all of it's cast iron. Most of it is the old stuff from the 1920s through the 1940s. A lot of it is your 6-inch pipe. And a lot of your 6-inch, we're replacing it with either 8-inch, or some of them we have to upsize all the way to 12 to improve fire flow. You can see the lengths that we're recommending, and the cost right now is just a number, right? We didn't go in there, we didn't see how much pavement we got to remove versus soil. It's just a unit, length times a certain price per diameter. So the ones that say NAs those are brand new water mains we're recommending to do some connections where you have some dead ends, and if we can connect them, we can create loops and improve the system flow. But those are the minimums we're recommending to do in the next 20 years. I mean, obviously you have a lot more cast iron from the 20s and 30s, and at some point, all of that, is going to need to be replaced. But this is the minimum between the water liability, the asset management, and history of the system that we are recommending over the next 20, 25 years. This is what they look like, where they're located. So no surprise, a lot of that stuff was shown up in the other maps as in red. And you can see some of it's from the water liability, some of it because of probability of failure, and some of it is township added just to make it work. But that's what it's all located at.
Looking at this last chart, can you explain the legend there?
So those are the sources of why we're recommending it. So the green are fire flow issues. The water reliability recommend. Some of it is a combination of all three, honestly. Like they popped up in all three. And the blue is the asset management.
What's the 42 represent?
Number of segments.
Number of segments
Yeah.
in this list above?
No, it's the number of GIS segments that we're recommending.
Oh,
so
okay.
it kind of, if you go into GIS,
right.
there's 42 segments of, from gate valve to gate valve.
Secret code then.
Yeah, it's a secret that he has access to. But yeah.
Okay, what's the next one then?
The blue is based on the ones with probability of failure greater than 4 that weren't already in the water liability study.
Okay.
And the orange is we sat down with the township and with John and Derek, and they wanted to add those. Again, those were the additional ones that didn't pop up in the water liability or the asset management, the extra ones. That made sense to replace while we were doing all of this.
So there's 2 that I see that are orange.
There's 3. There's one down at the island, all the way in the south end too. Yep.
So John, of the 2 that are, I'm assuming along Parkway or near there, can you explain those?
Yeah, it's, the Douglas right-of-way is one that parallels Crozille Parkway. So that's water mains in the rear of those homes, and we get at least 3 breaks a year on that line. And it's 6 inches, or I'm sorry, that's 8 inches well.
That's the Douglas right away. I know that.
Yeah, it's the
yeah.
Douglas right-of-way. Because the water main that is on Crozille Parkway is the transmission main, so that does not service the houses along there.
Gotcha, okay.
Pointing to now is there's 2 6-inch lines on 6 and an 8
Yep.
on Meridian right there. Those need to be upgraded as well due to the fire flow and type of pipe. And then actually we had recommended doing that little stub from Bellevue going to the country club as well, but that's not highlighted.
No, we'll add that. All right, that little stub, yep, I'll add. It's this little thing, right? This
Yes.
one? Yep, I'll add that.
Bayview one?
Oh, yeah, so also at the south end, we put the new 8-inch on East Riverside. The Bayview side really needs to be upgraded as well. So that's the one on the south end.
Is that looped right now or no?
Yes.
It is? It's not dead-ended on the, okay.
Are these three in orange on this list of capital plan?
Yes.
Look for it. Okay.
Yep, they're up there in this list here. And they're also on the map. And so, again, this is just sort of spreading out over the next 20 years, 21 years. But what Derek has to do next is kind of spread them out even more. But we just kind of trying to put them in. And just to show you kind of the order of them, I've got the actual table that says which one each year. But you can kind of see, we try to keep it under $1 million a year, but it doesn't always work because some projects just happen to be, 2 million projects, $2 million dollar projects. But you can see kind of where they fall right now. And the total, again, is about 30 million over 20 or 25 years, however way we end up breaking them. That is in 2025 dollars. That does not include any inflation right now. I am not going to guess on inflation at all, but kind of where they are.
Okay.
So if you recall, I think 2 meetings ago, I had put up a page that kind of went over like the water financing capacity. And we had talked about, well, we have operational capacity to fund capital improvements, operational revenue capacity to fund capital improvements. We have a bonding capacity, and then it varies depending upon the year, depending upon what bonds are falling off. So, as Maria had mentioned, and as we had talked about earlier in the meeting, our discussions after this is finalized is to how best we address that, and we can move some of this stuff around or consolidate years if it makes sense to save up and then do more work in one year than another, or if we have certain bonds falling off that we then know that we can take on more debt in one year than another, by bonding, we can move that all around. The goal would be to, minimize the burden to the consumer as much as we possibly can by doing some strategic organization of these capital improvements while still getting the work done that needs to be done in a timely manner. So, that's the challenge that we have to come up with that plan.
That is it.
Well, thank you very much. I thought it was very, very good report and very understandable. So we'll open it up to other questions from the board. Kevin, any additional questions at this point?
No, thank you.
Okay, Linda?
No, it was very clear. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
No.
Derek, I guess everybody's
Just,
had a chance.
Maria, where do we go from here?
So, I gotta add a small water main segment to this. We're gonna finalize this report, a draft of this report this week, get it to you guys to review. If you guys are all set, we'll finalize the report. You'll get a copy of it. You'll get the Excel spreadsheet, and then we have to submit a copy of this report to Eagle, so they have it. So, both on the water and the wastewater, Eagle will be checking in every few years to see, progress. And they will probably ask for an update of this report every 5 years. It's sounding like that's where they're heading. They didn't tell us that a few years ago when everybody started doing it, but I've been hearing now, one of your neighbors, they did the survey and they said, we need a 5-year update. Just to make sure that, conditions haven't gone too much, so you guys keep track of the condition of the assets, and that there is a program to update and maintain the system.
So you think Marie, you think it's going to be an every 5-year type of
It's,
review process?
if not more, not less. I doubt they'll come in probably, so 5 to something, yes. Depends on when they come and check on.
All right.
Yeah.
And when we submit this plan, obviously, we don't have an absolute plan for our step one to go forward with this. I mean, we still have discussions, we just got to figure out funding and everything else like that, which is all going to be kind of like a TBD type of an event. So that will probably be something that will be included in this submission to Engel, right?
I don't know if they, I mean, you could
And
probably
again,
answer
I'm
that better.
not, where I'm
mean,
trying to go with this, Derek, is that I don't think we really want to put an absolute date in there when we're going to have a first pass completed on any part of this plan.
Yeah, I think what they probably do, my assumption is what they do every 5 years is they look back and say, okay, well, how are you progressing on, your capital improvement plan? And if you say, well, we had planned in our plan to do this in 2026, but it didn't get done until 2027 because we coupled it with work that was in 2026 for 2027. I mean, I think that those are all justifiable and reasonable
Right.
explanations when they check in.
What they don't want to know is, they come in 6 years from now and you haven't done a single
Anything.
thing.
Right. Right.
That will get you,
Yeah.
you've got all these issues, you're not,
You're not addressing them.
addressing them, that would be a problem. But if things move around and you show how, and yeah, we decided to push this, look, we have we're gonna go for a loan. We don't want to do one a year. We want to take I'm just throwing $10 million loan and do a whole bunch of them over 3-4 years. You know what I mean? As long as you're moving and you're maintaining your system and you're trying to fix it and you're working on your fire flow and remember your fire flow also affects your insurance rating. So it's not just an Eagle thing, it's your insurance ratings as well for fire flow.
Okay.
So Maria, is Eagle's going to want to measure our progress. We say we're going to do A, B, C, D, E. They're going to want to measure our progress. Is there going to be a follow-on measure of the health of our system beyond what we're going to identify right now? In other words, is there going to be some measurement that, good grief, this cast iron's failing much faster than we thought it was? Is there going to be any follow-on
Not from that sense.
25-year period to determine
I don't think they have any.
need to do more? Or is Eagle going to be concerned about that?
I don't know, not yet. Right now, cast iron hasn't all fallen apart
But
everywhere.
right now, it's
That's just an
this is what we
example.
say we're going to do. They're going to want to see us doing it.
Do some of it, yes, keep
Okay.
progressing. They do check on you on other things, like, you do samplings and you check on your system. That stuff is, the quality
Right.
is a whole different other thing. That, when they come.
3 years.
Every 3 years, yeah. Is it your sanitary survey yeah. So that's when they've asked others about time to update their asset management plans, when they've come to do the sanitary survey. So you're probably 6 years, probably safe until the next one. But yeah, they just want to see now progress, that you know what you have, you know what condition it's in, and you're working towards maintaining it.
I have a couple comments. Phil will remember, I think, and John will remember. About 10 years ago when this was done, Duncan Murdoch, the fire chief, appeared here and heard the report. And follow-up to that was he encouraged us to complete the 12-inch water main loop on both East River Road and West River Road so that the exterior of the island was looped with a 12-inch water main. And we did that. We completed those several years ago. So if anybody's watching, we do try to follow up and do something. And we've replaced a lot of water main over the years, but this is a good update as to where we need to go.
Yep. It is you can see, your loops on the outside, we don't, no pressure problems, they're all actually, most of them are in green. You can see in this one as a business risk, they're both condition-wise and it's just, you've got a lot of old 6-inch cast iron in the middle.
Sure,
That we just got to work slow and steady at replacing.
There are a lot of neighborhood-related water main.
Yep.
And
And some of them are dead ends, so, but it's not unusual. You're not unique in that situation. It's just slow and steady. And, if you can remove more of it, great, but that's the minimum we're saying again, because you got a lot more 6-inch cast iron than what we're recommending. There's a lot more, but,
Okay, well, and then two other little comments. So as Derek mentioned, this will be a topic for us over the next 6 months or 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. We'll be continuously talking about this when we see the reports and so forth. The other thing that occurs to me is we have 3 bridges internal to the island that I know are important, that have been on our list. The Ferry Road Bridge, Swan Island Bridge, and the Elba Bridge. More immediately, I'm aware that the water main under the waterway under the Elba Bridge has to be replaced when the bridge is repaired, or when it's replaced. What's the status? I don't know what. Once I thought I heard it was $250,000 to do that. I mean, I don't know if we had a figure on it, but.
Yeah,
that's
some of
sort
it's going to be dependent upon the method. Yeah.
We also have a sewage pumping station at that location as well that we'll have to skirt around. So that might be a little bit more of an improvement there. That's an old lift station, isn't it?
It's fairly new, Bill. There's a 4-inch cast or ductile iron that they put in when they updated that in the 90s.
So as far as
and it's out of the way of the bridge. The only reason we need to move ours is because it's right in the abutment of the bridge.
That's not the case with Ferry Road and Swan?
Not aware of any utility conflicts on those two.
Neither one of those
Okay.
we have to move. I
So
mean,
that's-
we should update them at the time if we can afford it, but they're not in the way.
Okay. All right, so I just wanted to remind everybody that Elba water main by the bridge, it's a related issue to the bridge replacement, so. Anyway, okay, well, I'm done talking about it. I want to thank you very much. Is
Pleasure.
there anybody do either of you have a comment? Ryan or Bill, do you have anything you want to say?
Possibly need a copy of that thing.
You don't have a copy of it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bill, I just wanted to add 2 real quick things. You had mentioned that, and I think Maria had confirmed it, that, the current condition of the water system on the island is vastly improved over what it was probably 20, 25 years ago. And that has been because the DPS Commission in the Township of Groseal has done a significant amount of work over the past, 20 years. And you see that in some of the charts here about the condition of the water system. So I just want to emphasize that the township, it's not like, we have all this work we need to do, and it's the result of, the township just sitting back and not doing anything. And the township has been working diligently. The benefit of this is this gives us a roadmap to the future of, what we need to work on, and it's all been confirmed by engineering that these are the areas that we need to replace. It's a plan, right? Not that there wasn't a plan before, but, this takes us for the next, now into the next 25 years. I also want, while I've got Maria here, just to comment briefly about, other communities, what you're seeing with their condition. And the reason for that is I want the residents to be confident that, this isn't just a Groseal Township issue. What has been in the ground for 100 years has been vastly ignored by most municipalities, most water entities. And that's why the state said in 2017, you guys need to focus on this because water rates were essentially artificially low because there wasn't the consideration of the replacement of these assets, of this infrastructure in the water rates that were being charged. So I know that water rates are a constant, criticism. I pay them too, but it's a criticism in most communities because now the true cost of the asset, the true cost of the infrastructure is being assessed, and the capital work that's necessary is being regulated as having to be, dealt with. So I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit, Maria, but.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, 6-inch cast iron from the 1930s and 40s is not unusual. A lot of the communities, the older communities especially, have a lot of it. You actually don't have any 4-inch. I have communities that have 4-inch cast iron. I don't know what water goes through there, but, you guys don't have any of that anymore. But having, cast iron was state of the art when it was put in. And we all put a lot of it in, and then we put a lot of ductile iron in. And yes, once it got buried in the ground, it was working. We got water. Everybody kind of forgot. We got good water. Quality of water is great, and we kind of forgot about it. But no, you guys, I mean, as you said, your BRE shows you have no critical pipes that are, that are in the 16 through 25 rating. It's just your smaller pipes, and that's not surprising. But if you look at your BRE, you have nothing in red. Your bigger pipes are in good shape. They carry the water well everywhere. They loop it well. You just have some smaller, older pipes just like everybody else does. And, everybody's going to have to chip at it slow and steady.
Per feet or whatever, I mean, you're
Yep.
talking about a fraction of it, something like 39.
You have, where are my glasses? 82,000 feet of 6-inch out of 300 and almost 400,000.
Is there any, have you heard, or Derek, any state funding, federal funding for any of this that anybody's aware of at this time?
To replace 6-inch water main, unfortunately,
Oh,
or
to-
any water main, unfortunately not, right? Because everybody needs, every community that isn't, north of Hall Road or, brand new community or west, any community that's got older stuff needs their system replaced. Yeah, unfortunately not. There's way more need than there ever could be any funding.
Thank you. And Derek, your comments about what we've done in the past are well stated. Thank you very much. We haven't ignored the system.
No, you have not.
Particularly John, as he's had to deal with all the water main breaks that do occur. I guess one final comment as you were talking that occurred to me. Again, some of us maybe remember this, and you too, Derek. When Detroit Water System, before Great Lakes Water Authority, Detroit was the wholesale provider. And of course, they split off, 10 years ago, 12 years ago?
I know.
Created the Great Lakes Water Authority. So now Detroit is like a retail consumer just like we are, not the wholesale supplier anymore. So everybody thought that was good news. But before that, a lot of communities like us were even thinking, well, maybe we should build our own water plant, intake. Very expensive proposition because we were right on the water. And I remember that was an issue, and Ted Van Oz was the chairman of this commission. And at the time, Detroit was giving a break because here's the problem. During peak flows, they were charging a lot of money and it was draining their system. So they were encouraging communities to build storage.
Yep.
Remember that?
Do.
And everybody thought, well, if we build storage, we're going to get a big drop in our wholesale water rate because during peak flows, we can use our storage. Remember that, John? So the question I think the answer is probably no, but we don't have any storage on the island.
No.
And at the time, I think that was contemplated just as a potential, was to build a 500,000 gallon, 500,000 gallon storage facility, maybe near the fire station someplace, elevated, so wouldn't affect anybody's view. And that went away. That's expensive. But has on-island storage ever been talked about with you people?
Not for the township in particular, but we do those studies a lot of whether storage makes sense for a community or not. It does sometimes, but not always. It depends on what your peak hour flow is relative to your average, and how much savings we can do versus the cost of the storage and the payback in savings. We do that quite a bit for a lot of communities. I'm actually doing one right now for a community that doesn't look like it's a good idea for them. We did not look at it for you. It's a whole different study. Can we do it? Yes. We have the model to do it, but we have not done it. We did not look at it.
Not asking you to do it.
Yeah.
We do have two feeds,
Yes.
and they're miles apart.
Yep.
So,
These two, right?
but I just wanted to mention, I just wanted to ask. So,
Yep. No, it doesn't work for everybody. Again, it just depends on the ratio between your peak and average. If it's so big and it's, because most of the cost is your peak hour flow. That's where most of your, I do rate analysis a lot for on the water side. So that's where the biggest cost is what your peak number is. If you can shave that down, it reduces it. But again, it depends.
Okay.
On the community, the flows, the composition of the flow, all of that.
Thank you very much. If
Yep.
if there's nothing else, Derek, it's up to you. I want to thank you for your fine presentation.
Thank you for
And,
having me.
Thank you, Maria.
And I don't want to dismiss you, but I know you have a distance to travel, so thank you for being here, and you're welcome to stay or go whenever you want.
Thank you. I will take you on the offer. I'm leaving.
All right, that's the first presentation tonight. And now we're going to do a budget presentation before we get into the regular agenda. And Derek, all the pages are numbered. You want to start?
So Bill and I spoke before the meeting, and I think the strategy here, if the commission is okay with it, and let me know if you want to go a different route, but there was a budget memo that was included in the packet. I've just put all the pages from that in this PowerPoint presentation. It basically gives a synopsis of, the major points within the budget. And so what I'll do first is go over that memo, kind of key on some of the major points, and then in the PowerPoint presentation, I also have all the pages from the various budget books on the screen here, which we can go through line item by line item. So if that is okay by everybody, that's the route we'll go with it. And
That's on page 29,
is that the
budget memo.
budget memo?
Starts on page 29.
Yes, and it'll be in front of you on the overhead, so on your screen. So, so the DPS budget handles a variety of different accounts, as you guys know, because the majority of you have been here before. It's water, it's sewer, it's wastewater treatment plant, it's refuse, it's drainage, it's roads. Also lumped into the budget just because it's the most appropriate, I think, is like your open space accounts and your BPAC accounts. You guys don't normally review those or make recommendations for those. There are commissions that exist that suggest those budgets to the finance department, and those suggestions are incorporated in the budget. So you're not normally expected to make comments on those. So they're included because they're part of the overall budget that gets approved by the board, but I haven't focused on those in the presentation. So for the water account, we traditionally have adjusted our water rates annually to accommodate any increases in water rate adjustments from GLWA. So GLWA, their rate increase this year, or the proposed rate increase this year, resulted in an additional cost of about $187,683 to the township of Groseal. I believe and it's in the subsequent budget pages, but I think our budget went for water cost to GLWA went from about 1.2 million, I think, up to about 1.4 million. Of that increase in water cost from GLWA, I've only factored in a rate adjustment that would equal about $111,142 in additional revenue. So the remaining $70,000 or so has been addressed through either additional revenue elsewhere within the department or through reduction in expenditures within the various line items of the water account. So that was one thing I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Like I said, traditionally, we've always allocated that additional expense to the consumer. That's not the case in this budget. We've minimized it just to whatever we needed to balance the budget. We have two different cross-connection programs that have been budgeted into next year's fiscal budget. It's a residential and a commercial cross-connection program. So the costs for that will be outsourced, or we use an outsourced entity to do that work. The cross-connection program is just basically, it's an EGLE requirement to have that. But basically what it does is it's a compliance program to ensure that residences and businesses have the necessary cross-connection protection equipment, and that cross-connection protection equipment is maintained and is operational, which basically keeps contaminated water from various uses within your home from entering into the municipal water supply. So for example, if you have a sprinkler system, you see all those apparatuses on the outside of your house, vacuum breakers and whatnot. That's so the water from your sprinkler system, if there is ever a loss of pressure on the water main, that water from your sprinkler system doesn't get siphoned up into the water supply, the water pipes, and then transmitted to the consumers. So you have a vacuum breaker that releases that pressure and doesn't allow that water to basically enter the system. So there's a program for compliance that we're required to have, and that's what the cost is for that program. The residential side of things was new 2 years ago. I just spoke with the vendor today. They spoke with Eagle. Eagle is going to be satisfied with just doing the additional surveys that we have remaining. And then once those surveys are completed, next fiscal year, we'll likely have to start incorporating actual inspections at residential properties into our budget. But that'll be for the 26-27 budget year. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. Just because I'm rolling along doesn't mean I don't want to answer questions, so feel free to interrupt. General GIS assistance, a total of $7,500, and water asset management plan, about $7,500. Maria provided her presentation today of the water asset management plan. That project has been ongoing for about the past 18 years or 2 fiscal years. So we have a significant reduction in the cost for engineering because we no longer have to continue to work on that plan or continue to finalize that plan. There is some money that is set aside for updates to that plan. So if we have water main that's replaced, if we have some GIS that needs to be updated because of work that we've done, we'll have the engineers update the plan to make sure it's as current as it can be, reflecting what is in the system following any work that we do. And speaking with John, our meter system throughout the island is aging. Each year over year, we've added additional money into the meter system to make sure that we have the funding necessary to replace meters that are non-functional. This has an effect on our lost water report. So if meters fail and we don't replace the meters, then that water doesn't get metered. We're still charged by GLWA because it's water that comes into the community, but it's not water that we bill for or is counted. So making sure that your meters are operating properly and water is accounted for is important. So we've got enough money in there to be able to continue to replace those as necessary. Lead service line replacements. The inventory was completed. We have 43 that we need to replace. Depending upon the method, it can be anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 a piece to replace those lead service lines. So in fiscal year 25-26, we've budgeted to replace about 10 of those at a total cost of $70,000. If we get some in there that are $5,000 to replace, obviously that money will go a little bit further. But John and I have talked. We'd like to try to get them all swapped out in 5 years. We have more time than that to do that under the state law. But if we've got these, we want to get them taken care of as quickly as the budget allows for. We do have an older piece of equipment that we would like to replace. The intent is to replace our existing 416 backhoe with a 420 backhoe. Michigan Cat is the one that provided the quote for that. We'll obviously spec out what the guys want and move forward with whatever piece of equipment they prefer. But they have a very attractive that a lot of communities use, basically a financing program where it's basically financed over a 5-year period of time, and they consider it to be a lease. And then at the end of the 5-year period of time, there's a zero balance on the equipment, and you have it paid off. So that cost is about $33,500 for the initial year. We also did get a price on our trade-in, so we have that value, and about if we decided to trade that piece of equipment in, it basically covers about a year worth of payments. We haven't factored that into the budget at all. So that's the water account. The sewer system. So just to refresh your memory, on your water bill, there's a singular sewer charge that goes to both the township-wide sewer system costs and also the wastewater treatment plant costs. So that's one single revenue source that funds essentially 2 cost centers. There is not currently a an increase proposed for the sewer this fiscal year. The only adjustment that would be on the water bill would be, or your bill that you received would be for that water, $111,000. And I'll go into how that's calculated later. Between the wastewater treatment plant and the sewer system, we have about $886,000 in budgeted capital repairs. We're counting on about $651,000 in fund balance to balance the budget. This indicates the accounts are satisfying their operational costs without fund balance. Fund balance has been used in the past to satisfy capital repairs. So generally, I only like to use fund balance to satisfy capital improvements. I don't like to use fund balance to satisfy operational costs. So the key with this statement is, we have enough in operational expense to cover, or operational revenue to cover operational expense, and the money that's coming out is for capital work rather than operational expense. We recently received bids for sanitary sewer rehab work, and just to tie things together with the presentation you just saw, we have an asset management plan that was established, I think, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. We are working with this list, with this grant that we received, the one that you see here, that $1.6 million in bid results. We're working on that asset management plan, just like we will be on water. We'll be working on projects. The projects that have been specified in this work are those that are first on our asset management plan for our sanitary sewer system. So, once again, we don't want to just take one of these asset management plans and put it on the shelf. We want to work on it. We want to fund it. We want to, make progress on it, because that's the expectation. We have a bit of an issue here, though. The work that was bid, we received 2 bids. One was for about $1.6 million. The other was for about $2.2 million. The low bidder has chosen to forfeit their bid. Basically, they're pulling their bid. We're going to be talking about their bid bond, because when you submit a bid, generally you have to have a bid bond that ensures that you hold your bid that you submitted, that it's a solid bid, and you're technically not allowed to, under the bid documentation, pull that bid for 90 days. They're choosing to pull it. Basically, they said, we miscalculated, it was a bad bid, we're not going to be able to hold that price. So we'll deal with the bid bond aspect between us and our attorney. The second bid of $2.2 million, I don't believe Raines is comfortable giving a recommendation to award. So long story short, we're going to probably have to rebid that work. The $1.6 million was what was in the budget, but because I don't know what that actual cost is going to be, I'm not comfortable adjusting that budget number and then having to adjust it again, because my adjustment will be based upon a guess, not an actual bid. So my theory is just adjust it once. We can do a budget adjustment even after the fiscal year has started. That's reflective of an actual bid amount. We have more than enough in the grant to be able to support additional expense. The issue is that it's an 80-20 split, plus we have to cover the engineering. So our cost is going to be 20% of whatever that project is. What's been budgeted for is 20% of that $1.6 million. Obviously, if that goes up, our 20% increases. So does that all make sense? Okay.
The high bidder, $2.2 million, you indicated that maybe our engineers are not comfortable with the performance record of that firm?
They're not comfortable making a recommendation for whatever reasons. Yeah. So, yep. And then cleaning and televising, which we're required to do on a 5-year cycle, has been budgeted for the second year of its 5-year cycle, the total expense for that contract. And that's a contract that's a solid price. That's been bid and we're under contract with the vendor, $250,000. And as Maria had mentioned earlier, that is part of our asset management plan. That's an ongoing inventory of the pipes, so we can move and adjust our asset management plan for the sanitary sewer system based upon if they see something while they're doing the cleaning and the televising, where something has now become a priority, they can move those projects around. For the wastewater treatment plant, we're pretty much done with the administrative consent order work at the plant, the expansion. Veolia's contract for the operation of the plant, there was a scheduled increase under our contract with them. That's been incorporated into the budget. The HVAC has been completed at the plant. That was part of that grant. We're waiting on reimbursement of our 80% or the federal government's 80% cost share of that project. So we just vouchered for about $537,000. So we're awaiting that deposit. I think that voucher went in about a week ago. So what happens is we got to spend the money and then we got to submit for reimbursement. So that's ongoing. But that project is pretty much complete. Ryan and I worked together. Ryan provided the capital improvement list, which I think we talked about at the last meeting, for just general capital work that's necessary at the plant over the next fiscal year. And that total amount is about $250,000 for work next year. And that's outside like the ACO work. The budget includes $8.5 million in bond payments associated with the ACO work. Sludge hauling has been budgeted based upon the bids we received for the two events in 2025. And then Ryan mentioned there's a new chemical being used, sodium bisulfate, and that cost has been incorporated into the wastewater treatment plant budget. Refuse, the township entered a contract extension with Priority Waste. I believe it was this fall. Those expected increases were built into this current year's budget. So we don't expect to have to increase refuse rates because we already anticipated those this current fiscal year. And actually we had a little bit of savings when it came to disposal. So all things equaled out. I think the revenue we were projecting and the expenses that we were projecting for next year, they were like $10,000 off, and we've got a little bit of a fund balance in refuse. So that's not a capital intensive account, so we don't normally build fund balance in there. So we only try to charge exactly what that cost is without building any. So sometimes we'll use fund balance if we have any to offset cost. Road maintenance. Budgeted is dust control for 2 applications of dust bond as in previous years. Roadside mowing, priority winter maintenance, which is the Wayne County program. Emergency winter snow removal, which is an allocation we put away each year. If snow reaches over 8 inches within the neighborhoods, we have funding set aside where we hire a contractor and they go and clear out the neighborhoods to make sure police and fire can get in. We didn't have to use that at all this year because we never had a snowfall over 8 inches, but we put it in the budget nonetheless just to make sure we're prepared. Additional staffing for roadside cutting and beautification. Any kids coming home from college, if you're interested in cutting grass, come and see us. We'll be interested in hiring a couple of individuals for summer help. And then crack sealing, which has proven to be a pretty effective program over the years. We'll try to buddy up with a neighboring community on a bid to try to do some additional crack sealing and joint sealing for the upcoming fiscal year. Road capital. These contracts have been authorized by the board and discussed by this commission. Concrete work, repaving Belleville Drive, and the board did approve those allowances up to 125% of the project cost. So we intend to use what money we have available, which is about $1.3 million. Couple of key points that I wanted to just make sure we had discussions about. Number one was the rate increase. So if you see on this chart here, and sorry, I don't know what page it is in the packet, but it's the water revenue page, which should be in the front
All right, so we're
part.
going to back up then.
Yeah, so,
That would be page 3.
yeah. And if you want, you can just refer to what's on the screen, because that's exactly what page three of the budget report has on it. So water,
No, wait.
No, it's not
You
page
jumped
3.
into water.
yeah.
Page 3 is roads. Do you want to back up there or you want to start here? We can do water if you've got it up. You want to just do water?
Yeah, I can see what page it is.
12? Page 12
Of the draft budget or page 12 of the packet?
of the packet.
Yes, page 12.
Okay.
So water revenue is derived from basically two separate charges. One is your service charge and the other is your metered sales charge. So what is being proposed in this budget is an increase in the service charge, which is basically your quarterly fixed charge on your water bill, from $17.50 to $24.32 per home. If you increase that rate by that amount per account, it generates $111,142 in additional revenue. That's what I covered basically on the first slide of my memo. There isn't a recommendation, or there isn't a proposal to increase the rate, the commodity rate, just the service charge rate. And that is to account for, if you look on page 15 of the packet, this $1.4 million in costs from GLWA, which is basically a 15% increase. And GLWA does a similar method as we do on their charges, but they're far more severe in their fixed charge. They charge Groseal Township about $73,400 per month, or will next year, and then $13.73 per 1,000 cubic feet. So we charge 1 unit for us is 1,000 gallons. 1 unit for GLWA is 1,000 cubic feet of water. So they're not apples to oranges. So the question really for you is whether or not the DPS Commission is interested in adjusting any of the water rates different than what's being proposed in this budget.
Well, this water rate, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's about $7 per quarter. Difference is
yes.
$7.
Yep.
You
Yes,
get quarterly bills at $7 per quarter. That's on the service charge, Kevin, and I just wanted to comment. That's a charge that most communities do, because even if you're not home, if you're away for 6 months, and you say, "Well, I don't have any. Why should I get a water bill?" We still have expenses going, so it's not a consumption charge based on the amount of water you're using, but it's a service charge because the service is available. And I just wanted to point that out. So it's $7 a quarter. Personally, I'm comfortable with that.
Very much so.
Anybody else for now? Ray? Kevin?
How's that gonna get communicated to the homeowners?
Well, what? Yeah, come on. Ray, what we've normally done is,
Yeah.
not at budget time necessarily, but by July of each year, or June or July it is, we actually have a public hearing on it and make the rate increase to the township board. That's how it's done. That's how it's been done. Right? Does that
Correct.
timeline work for you? I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
that's what
Yeah,
we've
we
always done.
usually do the rate adjustments in July.
Or the first quarter's completed in the year.
All right.
So the fiscal year starts April 1st and, okay? Go ahead.
Okay, the other one was sewer charges. So if we take a look at what page this is in the packet, but page 18, there isn't a recommendation, or there isn't a suggestion to modify the sewer charge in this upcoming budget. The concern that I have is, as we tax capital reserves, we may need an adjustment if we get upside down, in my mind, on that operational versus capital cost. So if our operational expenditures get too high, where the capital has to be used to support the operations, that becomes concerning. And I know that if there's an increase in capital cost, it should only tax capital reserves or fund balance, but we also got to be mindful how much is there as well, and if we're overtaxing that account too, because ultimately your revenue should also support your capital improvements, right? We can't always continue to tax capital reserves, right? So, something to point out here, what you see on the revenue side is this EPA grant, $1.3 million. That is basically 80% of the 1.6 million for that project. If you go to the next page, the way that we actually, it's 2 pages from there, which is page number 21 of your packet. You see the expense there. So the EPA grant expense for the citywide sewer work is 1.9 million, and you say, well, how come it's not 1.6 million? Is because engineering expense is not eligible for reimbursement or for reimbursement for that grant. So what you have is 1.6 million in project expense plus $300,000 in some change in engineering expense gives you 1.9 million. And what we have to offset that is $1.3 million in grant revenue, which basically ends up being about $651,000 in net expense to the township, which is capital related. So this number could swell if we end up having, you know, a bigger cost for that project. So
Deal with that at that time.
we'll deal with that once we figure out what exactly that's going to be. And we'll address the rates at a later date if we need to have an adjustment there. So, but no need to worry about that now until we exactly know what that project is going to cost. So this budget was put together when we had that actual bid. So it was good. Those are good numbers. Now those are not accurate. So, okay. Let me see what the sewer rate structure we talked about. We talked about the EPA grant, and the water rate increase. Are there any items that you would like clarification on in the draft budget, or you would like me to cover in more detail?
Well, I just wondered if we could take a few minutes and maybe start back on page 3 and just ask everybody if there's anything they noted on any page, and we can move on. Everybody's had a chance to study the budget. Most of the costs, I would say this, and I've talked to Derek about it and studied it thoroughly myself. In terms of the operating costs for everything, water system, sewer system, the wastewater plant, the roads and drains, refuse, all the operating costs are there's no new personnel being added. The costs are what they are. And that everything that we really are talking about doing that we haven't done last year is capital related. We're buying things, we're improving things. So if we went through the pages, maybe some of you made notes on some of that stuff, something that doesn't make sense to you, let's just go through it page by page real quick.
Absolutely.
So I would start, page 3 of the packet, Derek, is roads.
Okay,
You got that in front of you?
I will.
Get it? And then now that's the roads revenue and expenditures.
Yes.
And then behind all that, Derek has added the history of expenditures for each line item. So we can skip through the histories pretty quickly,
And
unless
just
you
to-
have a question.
And just to clarify, Teresa puts the budget packets together with all that information, so I just want to make sure she gets the credit for, putting
So, is there anything on page 3? Anybody has a question?
Are you looking at page 3 at the bottom, right?
Yeah, 3 of 62, which is draft page 1 of the budget.
I'm just gonna go through these until somebody has a question, okay? Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Yep.
We don't need to go through every line item, I don't think, unless you have something. So page 3, everybody's okay with. That's the roads program. And we know what the construction amount is. Page 4 is the history of expenses. We'll move along with that. Page 5 is the drain projects. And I guess you skipped over the drainage when you went through your presentation
I
just a
did,
minute
yeah.
ago. And we're all familiar with, Kevin, you're new, so I don't want to pick on you, but we've had the drain program. Every year we do a couple of drain projects and we do a lot of ditching work. So there's nothing changed about that. Everybody okay with that? And page 6 is the history. Now, open space is not something we deal with, so the next 2 pages, 7 and 8, we can pass over, and the bike path budget, 9 and 10, we can pass over as well. We're moving right along. The page 11 is just a summary of all the revenues and expenditures on one sheet for the water system, sewer system, including the wastewater plant and the refuse. Okay, that's just a summary of those revenues and expenses. Then Derek's been talking about water a lot on page 12, and that displays the top item, the service charge displays the increase he talked about. Any questions? Okay, if not, page 13 is the history. Page 14, 15, page 14 is the water operating costs. Page 14 deals mostly with set costs for staff and our ongoing programs, existing staff, not additional staff. Page 15 is, again, operating costs. Now we get into some of the water main repair expenses and water replacement. Any questions on any of that? I would just point out that right in the middle of the page, you see about $180,000 for water main repairs and restoration. And page 16 is completion of expenses for the water operations, including our bond principal and interest payments. Okay?
I just want to focus on that real quick. So we talked about the water asset management plan earlier. You take a look down at account numbers 994000 and 995000. So these are bonds that existed from work that the township has done previously. We talked about there has been a lot of investment over the years in water main work. These bonds maturing, this one in 2026, and this one I think is in 36, and this in 40. These will be counted on to help fund some of that capital improvement schedule that we have. And towards the tail end of when all that expires, you're going to have about $1 million in annual revenue just from these bonds if they're not issued additionally, or there won't be, if there aren't any new additional bonds, there'll be about $1 million in bond revenue that would be available, or bond payments that would be available for projects at the tail end of that schedule. So these will be used to try to factor in, or figure out the cost for the capital improvements that were expressed by the engineer earlier. So does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Any questions on that? And I see we have a new resident here. Bob, thank you for being here. You're a little late. We've already deleted dust control from the road budget.
Thank you very much. $97,000 and took it right off.
We put it in another fund.
So page 18 is now we start the sewer. It's a sewer revenue, and Derek's already capsulized.
I got a question on that before we move off, though.
Okay, good.
Derek, what level of reimbursement are you still looking for from the government on that? And what government agency, is that the EPA that you guys are getting that funding on from that grant?
Yeah, so we spent, so the original grant was about $3.5 million. We've spent about $750,000 on that project, of which we'll get reimbursed about $580,000 on. We've submitted a reimbursement request for about $537,000. So, we've got probably close to about $2.7 million still available to be able to spend. Now, we haven't spent that yet. That will be for that project. We're going to rebid, and then that will be vouchered down on. It's a congressional appropriation through Congress, through the budgetary process. EPA, so what they do with a congressional appropriation is they basically identify what federal agency is most appropriate to administer that money.
Right.
And then they hand that responsibility off to that federal agency. So it's not necessarily an EPA grant per se. It's a federal appropriation through the congressional budget process. They're just the administering agency. So I think if the concern is, if there's going to be holdups on federal money,
Yep.
number one, we want to try to make sure we're getting the
Yep.
money that we've already spent. Number two, before we award the contract, we do want to see what exactly is going to happen with all of that.
Yeah, because
So-
that's a real show that's going on back there right
Yeah.
now. And
So-
they're going to cut everything they possibly can.
I'm not aware of the project that we have being necessarily one of the ones on the target list. In addition, it not being a grant, it's a congressional appropriation. There might be some legal protections because Congress appropriated that money, and I don't know legally whether the executive could pull back congressionally appropriated dollars. So, there's a lot to figure out about that. I can tell you that we did get a phone call from EPA about a month and a half ago saying, hey, you might want to voucher your stuff down as quickly as you possibly can to be able to make sure that you get
Get the
paid.
money, yes.
Because we don't know what's going to be affected and if there's going to be delay or whether that delay is going to be permanent or a day. Obviously, that changed, I think, a couple of days after, and we were able to put in for the reimbursement. But yeah, we're keeping track of all that.
Okay.
And there's a number of lobbying groups that have been in contact with us and other municipalities to get a census of like how much money is out there that we've been appropriated as communities, and they're obviously advocating to make sure that people in Washington understand what the impacts would be if those funds were removed. So, my biggest concern is, as the manager of the department, is that if we're spending money that we're getting reimbursed, because if we don't get reimbursed and the expectation was that we were,
Yep.
the project is done, the money's been spent, and then we got to figure out a way to fix it.
Yeah, we have a
right?
big budget hole.
Exactly.
Yep.
So, I'm well aware of that.
Okay.
Yep.
That was on page 18,
Yep.
and page 19 is a historical analysis going back 5 years on those line items. Page 20, 21 are the sanitary sewer operating budgets. As I said earlier, almost everything is on, no new personnel. And then we get into page 21 is capital and our bond debt. So are there any questions on that? Bond payments? And page 22 is a historical perspective. Then we have our wastewater treatment plan, and of course, money from the sewer fund is transferred to support the wastewater treatment plant. We have page 23, lists all the expenses and all the capital items that have been listed, some $250,000 worth of capital items at the plant. Any questions?
I wanted to point one thing out.
Sure.
So if you go to sewer revenue, just look at your chart here. You see property tax revenue of 0.944 in bills. That is the ACO work at the plant, right? That was passed by the voters 3 years ago. We had been paying out of capital reserves to cover the bond payments that are listed on page 23 of your budget packet. So that's $140,000 in principal payment and $360,000 in interest expense. This is the first year that we're levying this millage, and we did it that way so that things fell off. This came on. It wasn't an overall burden to the taxpayer compared to what they had been paying. But what I want to make sure that you remember is that this was a limited tax bond, and the difference between a limited and unlimited, you levy what's necessary to cover the debt. A limited is you basically assess a fixed amount for a period of time. The risk with that is you can't adjust the millage to account for reductions in property tax revenue or property tax value. The benefit to it is in good times, you have a set millage amount, which if you have an excess revenue, that can be used for operations. And the way that the millage was written, it was for ACO improvements and wastewater treatment plant upgrades. So when times are good, you have a little bit of additional money that helps out with sewer cost, which is right now. So if you see we have $742,000 in property tax revenue, and you have whatever 140 plus 360 is, so $500,000, actually $500,000, $550,000 in expense for the bonds. So now the bonds will go, the payments will go up and they'll go down, but you'll see the millage is kicking in some additional money for operations or capital improvements for the wastewater side within this fiscal year. So.
Thank you for that explanation. So that was on page 23 and prior couple pages for the wastewater plant. Any other questions on page 23? Page 24 is a historical perspective. Page 25 is the service charges and revenue for the refuse collection program. In a historical perspective on page 26. Page 27 is the detailed costs showing our refuse hauling contract, our glass recycling, and other miscellaneous fees, our dumping expenses at landfills. Any questions on page 27? And that takes us, page 28 is a historical perspective. Derek presented page 29 through 32 in detail for us, or through 31, and that puts us back to page 32 of the packet, which will get us on a normal track here.
Ready to
So-
start the meeting.
Ready to start the meeting. So later on in the meeting, we're going to have a call for a resolution to recommend the budget as presented to the township board. But that's not the immediate item of business, so. Okay? So with that,
May I ask one question on the recycling? That's on page 26 of 62. I assume that's for glass recycling? I'm sorry, it says,
Line item 824.
well, actually, I'm looking at the historic numbers. You're saying which page?
Okay, you're looking at historic.
Page 27?
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
The glass recycling, it shows up,
Oh, okay, there I see.
account 824.
Yeah, so glass recycle on the history, which is on page 28, is the container out here.
Well, I was looking at page 26, and it has, it just has, the number is.
Oh, yeah. So you're looking at the revenue. Page 26, recycling charges. Yeah, so your bill is broken out into like solid waste, yard waste, recycling. So there's 3 different charges on your water bill for refuse. In certain budget reports, we combine them. In certain expense reports, we combine them. Like, for example, refuse hauling contract on page 27, account number 810. That's everything. So that's all expense with the vendor, because we only pay one bill with the vendor. They don't separate it out. Although the bid is separated, the bill is not. So when they've given us separate prices for recycling, yard waste, and solid waste, but the bill is not separated out that way.
So that includes solid waste?
Yes.
Or, which would be glass?
No, so.
Go ahead.
You want to explain it?
No, you can get.
So the problem is the vendors, after we got into the recycling with this contractor, and this is pretty universal throughout Detroit, or through the metro area, they said, well, we're no longer going to collect glass because we can't get rid of it. So we had a group of residents on the island who said they would do whatever they could, and they found a vendor in Detroit that would process the glass. Actually, process it means, what's the right terminology? Grind it all up and then find a place to sell it to. And so I think you were there when we visited the site. Were you there, Phil? We visited the site and came up with a program where we allowed people to bring glass to the container. So we're paying a separate bill for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's commingled recyclables, which is you just put everything in your bin, your blue bin, and they send it to a MRF, which is, I don't know what the acronym stands for, what it is, municipal sorting recyclable facility. So they literally take all the commingled recyclables and separate them into cardboard, glass, paper. The problem with glass is it's not worth the cost to sort it. So unless they call it a single stream recyclable, which is just one product, not commingled, it has no value. So we had told the residents, you can't put glass in your commingled recyclables because they'll just throw the whole thing out because it requires them to sort it and it's not worth it at that point. And the residents got fairly upset about that. They couldn't understand, why am I throwing out this? This should be able to be recycled. So like Bill said, we got together and reviewed what options, and it does cost more on the water bill to have the glass recycle facility here, but it seemed like the residents wanted it. So, and it does get used quite heavily. So,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, that covers that for now, right? So we'll go back to the regular agenda, and in accordance, I actually got a memo today from the township clerk, from Brian Thiel, and he said that in accordance with the operating procedures of the township board, there are 2 opportunities for public comment, and the agenda that Derek's put together. Now we have an opportunity for public comment, and the second opportunity just before we adjourn the meeting. So this is the first call for public comment, and we do have some public in the audience and distinguished public that regularly attend meetings. So I'm going to just invite anybody that would like to speak on any topic related to what we're discussing or our agenda tonight to please come to the podium and address the board.
Greetings to the commission. Sorry I'm late, my calendar was a little.
No problem.
I missed the meeting, I'm not gonna ask you to repeat it, but, did we discuss a little bit of dust control like we were talking about yesterday?
We didn't go in depth with it, the commission. We just talked about the budgetary numbers, but yeah, not the logistics.
Are you going to do that yet, or?
We will, yeah. Not at this meeting, probably at a subsequent meeting. So, but if you want to bring it up, now would be the time.
Well, no, I'll let you present it, but as we discussed it yesterday, there are some ramifications on the application because of the bridge situation.
Yeah.
How we're going to propose to do that this year is gonna be a little unique.
Yeah, what Mr. Zelasco is referring to is with the Free Bridge closing potentially on April 1st, and the duration of that being about 2 months, that basically crosses over the time that we normally do our first dust application, which is usually the 2nd or 3rd week in May. And the conversation I had with Mr. Zelasco was about a resident that stopped by that is at the corner of Bridge and Thoroughfare. And as I think we probably all know from living on the island, that thoroughfare corridor gets used heavily to avoid the backups on Meridian by the traffic that's trying to go around and go down Bridge. And his concern was if that dust application isn't put on before that happens, that could potentially be a real issue. The issue that we have is we don't normally apply in April or in March for that matter because the weather conditions aren't optimum for the application. So we had talked, Bob and I, about the logistics of that and what we want to, what we would like to do, I think township-wide, hopefully, is maybe review that date when that first application takes place. But we have to talk with the vendor. We need to confirm everything with the bridge and then figure out a strategy moving forward. So,
If the county bridge is closed, I guess where I'm missing, and to get to your roads, makes it easier as long as you can get over the toll bridge.
and that's the issue. They normally come across with a large tanker, which we really don't want to take across the toll bridge. I have had a conversation, actually, John and I talked about this earlier today, and him and I were going to work together to see what options might exist with the vendor. So we'll put a strategy together, we'll present it to the commission and get it figured out, but it's just another thing that we have to, logistically figure out with the whole bridge situation. And obviously trying to do what's best for our residents under those circumstances, so.
Off the cuff, if we put the application down too early, in my experience with this, with dealing with this, I'm throwing this out, John, for you guys to talk about. We might as well talk about it right now since we're here.
Sorry to keep you extra, and I came late.
No, it's fine. If we put it down too early, then people start to complain, and we put the second coating down because we need to move it up, and then we get into fall, and then people are complaining again, and then we're looking at, to appease people, maybe a third application, which is very expensive. And I wonder if, just throw this out, I don't have any idea what the total weight of the tankers that are coming over are. Would they be acceptable if they were half full? I mean, you're
but
going
they're-
to have to look at that.
We have some challenges with the vendor and their interest in doing that. So I think John and I were talking about some strategy. I think also we're dealing with some incomplete information, that we've got to get some clarification on a number of different things. So,
Okay.
I think we'll be able to figure it out. I'm optimistic we can still try to hit the time that we want to hit through a couple of different methods or means. So we'll get it figured out, but I got to get some stuff cleared up first. So
We've already taken bids and awarded it.
no, we normally don't take bids because the material I think is proprietary. I think they're the only supplier of it, so it's like a sole source. But I've got some things that
I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah, I've got some things that I need to get clarified before we make a decision, just because we're dealing with incomplete information right now. So on a number of different fronts. I'll
Okay,
leave it at
good. I'm
that.
glad you're on top of it. I'm glad you raised the subject.
Well, Derek brought these points up last night. There are a lot of variables in the program this year because, as you know, the first application is really the most important. Once they grade that road, that's when it's really bad. And dealing with Wayne County is another variable that we all know we have to work with here. And if they say they're gonna close it down for 2 months and they close it down for the whole summer, then we're gonna have absolutely nothing. So that would be the other option. If we didn't put anything down, and Wayne County doesn't finish that project on time, we may have absolutely nothing for the summer. So it's another concern. But I'm gonna let you fellas figure it out. You always do a great job. And, thank you for grading the roads. John did a great job, filled all the potholes. But as we know, the dust starts to come up after you break that crust. So, it's gonna be, as I said, it's a unique situation this year because of the bridge. But I thank you again for doing the dust control. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate your comments, Bob. Anybody else wish to address the commission? Okay, we'll move on then. The next item is approval of the minutes of the February 11th meeting. Everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes. I'll make a motion to approve
I'll
the minutes
second.
as presented.
I'll second.
Second by Ray. Are there any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of the February 11th meeting, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the minutes are approved. I didn't hear any objection, I'm sorry. Quite a copious copy of the minutes that you had there, quite a long meeting.
Minutes are getting a little deep.
I hope for this meeting, you could just say, we reviewed the water sewer budgets and approved it. But maybe just deal with the rate increase a little bit. Next item is the approval of the bills, which are displayed on pages 42 through 46. I'll make a motion to approve the bills as presented.
Support.
Are there any comments about any of the bills on pages 42 through 46? This is for the prior month. Hearing none, all in favor, get by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The bills are approved. The next item is a statement of revenues and expenses. Now, I just want to, the period that this goes through is through February, which March is the last month of the fiscal year, so this is 11-month report on revenues and expenditures. Are there any comments? If not, we'll just receive them and file them. doesn't require approval. Next item, Derek, I'll let you handle it, is the approval of the, the treasurer's report is not included. It just didn't get completed, and so we're going to move on from that. We have two action items. Motion to support the proposed 2025-2026 budget. And Derek, I'll let you quickly address that.
Yeah, I have no problem with you guys making an amendment to this if you want to remove open space and BPAC. I mean, I don't know that that's fair for you guys to make a recommendation when you weren't part of the formulation or review of that. So that would be my only comment. And this is just, you know, something we do annually to indicate that to the township board that you guys have reviewed it, that you are supporting what's being proposed, and you know, that gives them some you know, understanding that the commission supports what's being recommended.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve budgets for drainage, roads, water, sewer, wastewater, and refuse?
Make a motion.
Stanko made the motion to approve. Is there support?
I'll support.
Support by Ray Biddle. What's before us is just the ones we discussed: drainage, roads, water, sewer, wastewater treatment plant, and refuse. Any further discussion on those? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The budgets are recommended to the Township Board for approval. Thank you very much for your good work on that, Derek, and explanation. You too, John. Thank you. Next item is an action item. Recommend a DPS commissioner be appointed. We had three, I'm aware that we had three applicants for the vacancy that's occurred with the loss of Les Schmidtke. And of the three applicants, I know that, I think Kevin, you and Phil were involved in interviews. I'll let any one of you, and Derek, the recommendation is to appoint Les Schmidtke to the vacancy. Lance Schmidtke, I'm sorry, Lance, Les's son, who's attended many of our meetings. He brought Les for 2 or 3 years when Les needed assistance to get here. And he grew up with his father going on water main breaks on all holidays in the middle of the night, and he went with him a lot of times. I think Lance understands the work of the Public Services Department. But I'll let Derek, you want to comment further?
Just that you know, Phil and Kevin and I, we interviewed 2 of the candidates. They both did a very good job, and I think they both would actually make very good members of the DPS commission. But ultimately, I believe we settled on Lance as the recommended candidate. If the DPS commission endorses this, it'll go to the township board at their April 24th meeting for approval, and then Lance would be a member of the commission starting with I believe our May meeting.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Phil, you want to make a motion to
Yeah.
appoint Lance?
I move that we recommend to the Township Board that Lance Schmidtke is appointed to the vacancy on the DPS Commission.
Yep. Supported by Flavin. Are there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So it's approval to recommend that Lance Schmidtke be appointed to the commission. Thank you. Next item is the manager's report.
Just a couple items under my report. Number one, the water loss report that's included in the packet. Highlighted number down at the bottom on page 59. 23.76% is where we're at, and that's running average over the past about 18 months, 18 to 24 months. Any questions on that? If not, I've got a memo in there from our engineers with regards to current projects. It's up to the DPS commission if you guys would like to go over those projects, or if you had specific questions, I would be more than happy to answer those.
Let's go back to the water loss report.
Yes.
Do you want to factor in what that legal adjustment has been made? Has that been resolved?
I don't believe it has. We have 2.6 million gallons that's been averaged in, and that's from John and I talking about water main breaks and hydrant flushing, but I don't believe the Meridian Road water main's been factored in. We can do that, and I think we have quantities because that was actually part of the suit.
Yeah,
so.
I'm just thinking that historically, it would be probably best to
Sure.
factor that in at some point in time, whenever that does get resolved, just so that it doesn't show as bad as what it is.
Okay, that's a good point.
I think as we discuss the budget, unless somebody has an objection, the memo from our engineer, Sahil Sabak, to Derek, pretty self-explanatory. Anybody have any questions on it? I don't hear anybody does. I would just say if anybody that's watching has ever any interest, it lists a lot of the projects, numerous projects that this commission has been part of to accomplish with regard to water mains, roads, sewer plant improvements, all the things we've done over the years, drains, joint sealing on roads. There's an extensive list contained in the report. So it's a good summary if anybody's ever interested in that.
That concludes my report if there are no questions.
Okay. With that, John Keim, you have anything to give us an update on?
I would just like to add that the sewer cleaning contractor did start on the 10th, and they'll be here for approximately a week to finish up phase 1. So any of the locations that are in, they're currently hanging out door knockers to let the residents know that they'll be in their neighborhood and what precautions to take while they're in their area. And then they're scheduled to come back and begin phase 2 on May 10th, or excuse me, May 1st.
Start phase 2 then?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And they're doing well? That
Doing real
new
well.
contractor?
Yes.
Good, good. Do you have anything you want to add to the meeting tonight, Ryan? Or are you all set?
Yeah, a few things.
Hello, everyone. The annual Veolia contract increase, we went over that already. That's going to go up 3.53%. The sludge hauling started last Wednesday at the plant. It's going well. It looks like it'll be finished by the end of the month. And they'll be back in September for the other haul. So, the Amiad filter project, which is in our capital improvement. I originally at the last meeting said that the township was going to purchase that equipment like now so that we have it sooner. After evaluating that with C Rains, I'm working on them or with them. It's more involved, that actual project, than we thought. There's a control panel that has to tie into. There's multiple valves and piping that has to be replaced with that. So I just kind of feel it's smarter if both the purchase and install all goes out for a bid, so that we're not missing something on that, and versus it's all on the contractor. And the repair is actually holding. So it looks like that could probably go out for bid maybe in May, and then we could have it installed in September. In that. Let's see. The odor control equipment, which is working at the plant, the final install that is happening on Thursday. So that's already paid for in the price. They have to just mount those cabinets on the wall in the primary room. And then actually that unit is going to be installed upstairs in a nicer atmosphere. So it makes it last longer. So, and that's all in the price. which
So
we
that
paid
chemical
for.
you're using, is it working?
I believe so. And more than like, I think we can probably use less of it too. Like, so we can kind of figure out how much we need to use. So I believe we can actually save on that, but we'll have to wait and kind of, see how much we're using of that.
Sure, okay.
But that's about all I have at the plant.
One thing that it's worth mentioning, Ryan made himself available a couple of weeks ago for a tour of the plant that the Girl Scouts or Brownies or whatever wanted to do. It was actually for a merit badge or whatever they call them, and that it was for like environmental science or something like that. So Ryan made himself available at, I think it was at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, and him and I took around, I think, nine or so, 7 or 8 or 9 scouts and Girl Scouts, and showed them all the plant operations. And I think there was a picture on Facebook, because it was such a great picture, we wanted to get it out there. But it was really cool to see, them be interested in something like a wastewater treatment plant. And they had a lot of questions, and it was a great tour, though. It was time well spent. So thank you to Ryan for making himself available. And
Thank you,
Yeah, no
Ryan.
problem.
And
I
thank you,
agree. Yeah, it
Derek.
went well. Yeah, it was good.
I looked at that picture, thank you for doing that, and they all had smiles on their faces.
Well, there you go, right?
Well, and I thought, that's saying something in a sewage plant.
Yeah, right.
And I also thought I'd like to see that badge that they got. So, thank you, Ryan and Derek.
That's all I got.
Well,
Questions?
since he brought it up, I was gonna, I brought this up before, is to have an open house at the wastewater plant when it's finished, because I don't think Public Works gets enough credit for all the things we do. And you could have a sewer display and a water department display, and even something regarding refuse, to let people know what Public Works is to the island, because it's as much a health and safety issue. The water we drink, the waste we dispose of our waste, how we handle drainage on the island, and all those things. They're safety issues, they're health issues. And then I got thinking about, I'd like to see a map drawn, not a map, but a drawing that people could take with them, that's printed nicely, that shows how I don't know how you do this yet, maybe the engineers could do it, how the
Got stages,
wastewater
yep.
enters the plant,
Yep. Yeah,
and
we
what
can do it.
story, and then how it goes through the plant, and what the different things are, something simple. And then I started thinking about logistics. I mean, how would you do, if you had an open house on a Saturday, maybe, I was thinking this spring, but now I'm thinking in the fall, if we were to do it. I'm just throwing it out here for you, Derek, to think about, and Ryan, and John, if we were to do it, it'd be kind of nice to, you have Fire Prevention Week, the fire department promotes themselves, and of course, everybody, the police are the police, they're self-promoting just because who they are. But I don't think Public Works gets enough credit. So it's just an idea, I'm just throwing it out there. No timeline at this point. Maybe the fall's a better target if it's possible. Maybe we'd have to have parking on just one side of the road or something, but I don't know. Maybe a crazy idea, but we just don't do enough promotion. And I think it's something to see, especially with the new facilities, new pumps we have.
Yeah, lots of improvements there.
You could
and
have-
That's a thing.
Like the, what's the room called, the RF, what's
The
the?
RBCs,
Yeah.
those are
I mean, you could
interesting
have
to
the
see.
door open and just
Yep.
have it barricaded so people could take a
Yeah,
peek.
you just look in the window, don't have to go
That
in,
kind of thing. We wouldn't want anybody going downstairs, I don't think. But at any rate, just an
Yeah.
idea. We need all the public relations we can get, so.
I agree.
All right, thank you, Ryan.
Great. Thank you.
So now we're going to go around for Chairman's report. I don't have anything else to add. I want to thank Derek for all the work he's done on the budget. I know with the bridge issue, the toll bridge issue, his time is greatly consumed with tremendous things. And so, John, thank you on the budget, and thank the finance director. I think it's a pretty good budget. And commissioners' reports, we'll start with Kevin. Anything you want to say?
I, not at this time, I think.
Okay.
So, thank you to Derek for putting together a 25 to 30-year budget, or plan. We've asked for 5-year plans for some departments, and how many years is the plan again?
They're 25-year.
A 25-year plan with capital improvements and estimates. I think that's pretty impressive, so thank you for doing that, and thank you to the commission for pushing for that.
Thank
So,
you.
Thanks.
Linda?
I'm good.
Phil?
Just a question, actually. What I get asked most often is by people, is there any update on when the bridge is going to close? Do we have any further indication from Wayne County, Derek? Are we still on for April 1st, or can you comment on that?
As far as we've been officially told, it's still April 1st. But we spoke with the county, I think, yesterday, and they're supposed to give us an update in the next day or two as to whether that's still the case or not. So hopefully something soon to the residents, as we're 2 weeks out, right? So, but yeah, something should be forthcoming on that, just either confirmation of that or not, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm good.
Great. Anything else? Nope. So, now I have to offer another opportunity for people to speak from the floor before we adjourn. Is there anybody like to speak? Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Bill Heil. I live on East River Road. That report we got from Maria was a big thing for me. I'm glad to see that we're beginning to take that bull by the horns and try to deal with it. And I want to say thank you for that. That's going to mean a lot to this community when we have control on that.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for being a strong supporter of our work. I appreciate it. Thank you. With that, if there's no other comment, I'll entertain a motion for, oh, I'm sorry, Bob. I hope you're not going to propose that the glass recycling be ground up and used for dust control.
Boy, that'd really be something on the tires, wouldn't it? No, you mentioned PR, Bill. I just thought maybe I'd try and close here a little bit on a high note. We have 2 members of the board here tonight, and these people I support 100%. They're good people. I'm looking forward to their dedication, and it never hurts to have the treasurer as your liaison. Regarding the comment, and it wasn't your comment, it's you people do not get enough credit for what you do. You really don't. And you address the important issues. People don't have to come down here and complain because you take care of everything. You do a great job. And I just want you to know it's greatly appreciated.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the credit goes to our manager and
Yes.
field manager.
It's a joint, it's everybody pulling the same direction, right? So.
Well, we're lucky. Let's just say that.
We have a good team.
I've heard of communities that have managers that never leave City Hall, that don't know what's going out in the field, and that's no good. Bill Heil taught me that. You got to get out and sniff the sewers. I always say we have all the fun stuff. Garbage, sewage, gutters, trash, water, but it is important stuff. So I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll support.
Supported by Stanko. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night.